why do I need to have some guy 2,000 years ago or 1,400 years ago interpret something for me that I can interpret for myself in terms of faith and spirituality?
So first of all,
the Quran does tell you to reflect upon it. However, when it comes to deriving rulings, you do want to double check with scholars and tafsir, and especially the Sunnah, to see how the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba understood those ayat. Otherwise, you're going to end up either like a takfiri or khariji or something like that kind of understanding, or a complete modernist, revisionist understanding that is not even anywhere close to the understanding of the text. Anyway, this is a discussion between two liberals, not two Muslims, two liberals, and it's pretty funny, actually.
I think you have a misunderstanding of the very concept of scripture or speaking to God. But let's rewind back for a moment here. Why do you speak English?
Yes, Cenk. Why do you speak English? You know what, guys? I am surprised that no one has really responded to Cenk Uygur. This is not Cenk Uygur, by the way. This is Cenk Uygur.
So, Sam, that's a very important distinction.
Cenk Uygur is host of the TYT, the Young Turks, which is one of the leading liberal platforms on the internet out there. Although now there's probably enough legitimate competitors like Vice. But like I said, I'm surprised no one has responded to him because, first of all, he seems like he is, to some extent, sincere. I don't think he's intelligent at all when it comes to religion. He's made even blasphemous statements and is completely opposed to religion, said he's even abandoned Islam, even though he doesn't have any formal Islamic education and doesn't seem to know what he's talking about. But he does seem to know what he's talking about to some degree when it comes to politics. Let's watch a little bit.
Because the Quran says, don't touch the Christians and the Jews, they're people of the book. And of course,
right, and there's a reason for that.
But then when you get into the real world, Sam, instead of the hypothetical world of the doctrines, right? Again, in the real world, there's two things that are very important that happen. One, historically, Christians have cherry-picked the good parts at times, Martin Luther King Jr.
Here, Cenk debates Islamophobe atheist Sam Harris. This interview is about 8 years old, but I think he did a decent job in some areas. Obviously, there was a lot of holes in Cenk's arguments, and again, he is not well-versed in Islam at all, by his own admission.
And they have picked hideous parts of the Bible for slavery, the Inquisition, the Holocaust, the anti-Semitism, and the list goes on and on and on. So historically, I mean, on Holocaust alone, let alone everything else I've mentioned here, Christians win. They have been the most violent, okay? Right? But the Muslims also ruled the world, and they didn't kill everybody. And in fact, the Christians did kill or tried to kill all the Jews, and the Muslims didn't. So it couldn't be the doctrine alone. It just can't be.
Here, I think he brings up some good points against Sam Harris. Anyways, the reason I'm making this video, like I said, I'm surprised very few people have responded to Cenk. Okay, is he the most popular today? Probably not. He's probably not the most popular liberal today. But like I said, I think he's worth engaging. He does seem to be, like I said, sincere and genuine in some areas. I wouldn't just send any Muslim to go and talk to Cenk, whether it's privately or publicly. Publicly, someone could propose that a Muslim come onto his platform, or they could invite them onto their platform. But I think we need to be strategic about which Muslim we send to engage, because it needs to be somebody who is well versed in liberal philosophy. That is Cenk's framework. So he is a diehard liberal, right? As by his own admission. But you know what? Seeing him on the PBD or Patrick Bet David podcast recently gave me a little hope that, you know what, maybe this person is open to modifying his views and taking the first step into revisiting liberalism, which I think is dying in many respects, both from the inside and from the outside. So number one, does Cenk, and here's some topics just for ideas, what to engage him on. Number one, does Cenk actually believe in free speech? Is there such a thing as absolute free speech? I know he's a supporter of free speech, but I think that there needs to be a deep dive conducted into that topic as to what really constitutes as free speech. Is absolute free speech something good for the world, like, as they say, shouting fire in a crowded theater? Another topic to engage Cenk on is probably the rainbow alphabet movement. Like I said, by his own admission, hopefully, I think he'd be willing to admit that there is some serious moral problems coming from that movement, especially in the way that it looks at children and preteens and teenagers and etc. And obviously, we as Muslims and Islam, we take a very clear stance on this issue. But with him, that would be maybe the starting point. And then finally, maybe morality itself. Where does he get his morals from exactly? Where does he think morality comes from? And maybe even these deeper questions about life, philosophical questions like purpose. So I don't think the goal, purpose, afterlife, origin, what he actually thinks about science. Does he actually take the same stance as scientists? Because a lot of liberals and atheists, unfortunately, believe in scientism, right? They say outrageous things about the world that I don't even think some scientists would say, right? You can even see refutations of Richard Dawkins and so forth by agnostic scientists. Anyways, and obviously one of the main things, and I think this is where he would admit, is he should be engaged on the topic of Islam itself. I think he admits he doesn't. I know he says or claims that he came from a Muslim upbringing or Islamic upbringing. How much education does he really have in Islam? I think he'd be willing to admit maybe more than the average American, but not more than a Muslim talib al-ilm, da'i, or interlocutor that would obviously be eventually, hopefully, be engaging him on his platform or theirs. So I think that he'd be willing to have that discussion. And hopefully, he did see some of the recent discussions with social media influencers out there, discussions, debates, and interviews that have taken place in the last few years. Now, why am I bringing this up? See, brothers and sisters, I'm sure when towards the end, when I might drop some name suggestions as to who might be suited to engage him, you might be fixated on the name, but put that aside for a second. These are just suggestions, and I really don't have concrete answers as to how to go about this. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, he's going to get his information on Islam from somewhere. It might as well be somebody from the Sunni Muslim community. Okay, so like I said, myself, I have my disagreements or whatnot. My point here is where can we as Muslims all agree that somebody needs to engage him on with integrity, at face value, and just be open and forthcoming and just have a genuine conversation. This is not to debate Cenk. I don't think, first of all, he's a great debater. I want to give him credit where it's due. He's a good debater, but like I said, he's made some very ignorant, some cases offensive statements to both Muslims and Christians, and to all faiths. And he's like I said, he's just gotten it wrong, plain wrong. Like I said, I haven't even heard missionaries or atheists say the things that he's said. He's gotten like things factually wrong about religion. So, but I think, like I said, he seems like someone who'd be like, okay, you know what? Okay, maybe I got it wrong there. I think he'd be willing to say that. So I think he should engage, inshallah ta'ala, some Muslims on his platform. And why am I bringing this up? You see, 5 or 10 years ago, around that time that he was engaging Sam Harris, someone could say something on CNN or Fox News or CBC or some news channel in France and Australia they could say something about Islam and Muslims and they could get away with it. But notice when Jordan Peterson said something recently, there were at least, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you all remember, Jordan Peterson said something about Islam and Muslims. He said the message to the Muslim world, and there were at least 10 responses, from people who had a decent, sizable following or subscription list or list of subscribers. Back in the day, it was just, we just write an article somewhere on a Muslim blog, and that would be about it. And the readership of that article would just be Muslims mainly. That's about it. But now people just can't get away with making they cannot get away with making a factually incorrect statement about Islam and Muslims. So again, whether it's, Brother Hamza Zortzis, or Brother Muhammad Hijab, or Brother Daniel, or Brother Shadee, who goes to engage this individual, Brother Dr. Bilal, I don't know who should engage Cenk at this point, but I think, like I said, he should be open to having Muslims onto his platform, or to be willing to come onto their platform, because first of all, it's better that he gets his information from Muslim and Islamic sources, from the right sources. Like I said, he can be easily fact checked on these things, and I think he'd be willing to admit that he got it wrong in some areas. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the straight path, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us humility. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You do a war and you have a kill ratio of 1,000, sometimes 100 to 1, sometimes even more, and that kills thousands of Palestinians, and go, oh golly gee, did I kill all of them? It was an accident. When the terrorist Arabs who can't govern themselves, who are vicious terrorists, they do it, that is terrorism. When the state of Israel does it, it is not terrorism. And we killed 100 times more, but it is not terrorism. We bomb in the middle
Like I
of
said,
a
he's a
crowded
decent
city
debater,
and murder their
and
civilians,
I
but
think
that is not
someone
terrorism,
perhaps worth
because the
engaging.
state
Wallahu
does
alam.
it, and people Dennis Prager does it, but the Arabs and the Palestinians are vicious terrorists by nature and can never govern themselves. Boy, advocate for freedom, Dennis. You're doing great.